The soundtrack of a video game plays a large part into forming the full experience. It helps influence the tone, the emotion, a plethora of things depending on the game and the soundtrack along with it. And Sonic the Hedgehog is no stranger to the concept. It's a well-known fact that Sonic games tend to have absolutely fantastic soundtracks regardless of the quality of the game they are attached to. Sonic R is one of the original racing games published under the Sonic brand, and this had a very unique soundtrack even to this day compared to other Sonic the Hedgehog games. The Sonic R soundtrack, in fact, had a bit of infamy for a time because of the direction it went with. For a lot of people, the music that accompanied Sonic R was not what they would have expected from a Sonic game. And I would be lying if I said there wasn't a very clear difference in the music you hear in Sonic R compared to something like Sonic 3D Blast or Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It is definitely different. But different doesn't mean bad, and in fact, a lot of the people that would criticize the soundtrack for the difference would still admit that in a vacuum, the music sounded great. For me, when I played Sonic R in my younger years, I also felt the soundtrack was perhaps not my first pick. However, I definitely still enjoyed the music. Sonic R's soundtrack is a jam, and regardless of my opinions on if it belonged there or not, that cannot be denied. And to be honest, I think Sonic R works really well with the soundtrack. Sure, it's different to a lot of other Sonic games, but that just helps give it its own flavor. And in this video, I want to go over my appreciation for the music in Sonic R. So I'm not really talking about the game itself, but specifically its music. The majority of the music in Sonic R comes with lyrics. And especially with age, coming back to this soundtrack and listening to the words and taking in their meaning give me a very different experience than what I had back when I played this as a kid. The lines in these songs speak of trials and tribulations that I can identify with now in adult life, but the magical thing about that is these were written so many years ago during a different year. Now we're in 2023, but back whenever these lines were written, the fact that they can still hearken to a truth that people experience to this day shows that the people behind the music of Sonic R put a lot of thought, care, and emotion into what they were producing, which is why it can still ring true even today. That said, there is one track that doesn't have any lyrics that I want to talk over quickly before we get into the rest of them, and that's the one we're listening to right now, the options screen music. And it is a groove. The beats and the bops, it's nice and calm, it gets you feeling ready for what's to come. A friendly race perhaps. It's something soothing about it as you're just traveling through the menus and looking at all of the assets. And it's a really nice piece of music that I don't think a lot of people will hear or appreciate these days due to the obscurity of the game as a whole, but one worth mentioning nonetheless. One of the first tracks you'll likely hear if you ever do play Sonic R is Can You Feel the Sunshine? Now this is one of the few that you may have already heard without even playing the game. And a large part of that is because Can You Feel the Sunshine has a bit of a history being memed as a rather demonic and sinister song that's uncanny in the happiness of the lyrics, and it's used in contrast a lot of the time with Tails doll creepypastas and things like that. Now these days, that sort of thing has become less popular, but the knowledge of Can You Feel the Sunshine that was largely promoted through these things has meant that this song has received a bit of appreciation in music enthusiasts to this day. And it's probably the Sonic R song I find the most remixes by fans out of all of them. So it's definitely amongst the most well known from the games. But the actual Can You Feel the Sunshine as it is such a positive and optimistic song. It talks about getting over a bad period, whether it was only a day or perhaps far longer than that, and it attributes it to the feeling as when you are in the sunshine for the first time in a while. Maybe it's been a cloudy, stormy week and the sun has just managed to pass through the clouds for the first time in a while. And the emotion that comes with the new day and the new opportunities and the ability to try and make sure to enjoy and get the most out of the day as it comes. As well as talking about how, yeah, sometimes it won't go your way, sometimes things will be bad, but if you can just remember the things that were good through those times, eventually they will come around again. Eventually things can change, whether through your action or through endurance, or most likely both. You'll be able to experience that joy again. That it's just such a pleasant song, and I think it can speak for itself on that front. So filled with optimism and hope and appreciation for just having another fantastic day. And it's one of my favourite songs from Sonic R for sure. Next up is Living in the City. This is one of the tracks from the OST where, regardless of what it is the lyrics are actually saying, those words alongside the instrumentation come together to form an absolute bop that's great to listen to or to race to, regardless of what you're looking for. Now, the lyrics of Living in the City, whilst catchy, do seem to talk somewhat about the experience of, living in a city. Though it's a little bit less direct than perhaps Can You Feel the Sunshine and the theme it was going for. And I should also state that obviously as a piece of art, what you take away from each of these tracks is going to be different, maybe a little, maybe a lot, than what I bring away from it. But that's part of the experience. We can all glean something different from the work that's there. And for me, Living in the City really speaks to the, or perhaps is the word for it, of going to the city and actually living there and exploring and spending time in there from the perspective of perhaps someone who hadn't done so before. Maybe you're getting your first big job and it's taking you to the city. Maybe you're going to university and thus it's taking you to the city. For whatever reason, you didn't really spend much time in the city before, and now here you are. And it seems to be talking about the opportunities and the vast quantity of things to do and the different way of life, and how even at night the sky is lit up by lights like stars from the city below. And it's a very magical take on what it is to live in a city through these lyrics. Now, despite the upbeat nature of Living in a City, I think it still does address some of the trials that come with the territory. As many of us, I'm sure, can attest to, living in a city is not all sunshine and rainbows, and there are a lot of different complexities and downsides to that lifestyle and place of living. And so yeah, whilst this song is positive, and it's supposed to be positive, it does still touch upon that notion when it talks about, you have to survive. You've got to keep the dream alive. That is possibly talking about persevering through struggle. You have a dream, you're trying to achieve something or live a certain way, and you need to survive, and there's a lot of things that could go wrong in the city. So sometimes it really can feel like survival, especially if you're having a string of misfortunate occurrences. Maybe you get laid off, maybe there's a robbery on the street, there's so many things that could go wrong. But you have a dream in mind, otherwise you wouldn't be there. It also talks about where everything is free, can't you see? Now, this one is a bit of an odd line for me. It could be talking about perhaps an idealistic viewpoint of a future where not only are you all living in the city, but things are free and life is good. Another thing I took away from it though is potentially it could be where you're remembering where you came from before the city, and perhaps you're in the city to achieve something, but then you'll go back to way before, perhaps a countryside life. As I said, you'll take what you'll take from each song independently. For me, it's mostly the song about city life, and then there are a couple lines that I find a little bit strange. But as I said at the start of this section, just hearing the words with the music is still a good time anyway, so even if I can't make full sense of everything being said, I still enjoy the song. Back in Time is a very, very emotionally charged song, and it's pretty clear to me that it's specifically talking about someone and their love interest, and how they wish things were different. Numerous points of the song, including the beginning, suggest that whoever is doing the singing isn't satisfied with the current state of their life. Sometimes they ask themselves, what are they doing here? And they think of all the reasons, but it's still not clear. And this could be anything, really. Perhaps they aren't happy with their job. Maybe they aren't happy with the place they live, the city that they're in, and things haven't gone right. It doesn't really matter the specifics. The idea is that there's somebody and they're not satisfied with where their life is currently. But there's someone they love dearly in their life, and that they want that person to take them somewhere else. Somewhere nowhere near where they are, and even back in time to another world. And you can take that literally, I suppose, but the way I hear that, back in time to another world, this is reflective. It's looking to the past, where their life was different, whether they had already met before or they hadn't, regardless. It's going back in time to another world, where the perception of the world was different, the way people acted were different, their responsibilities were different, potentially non-existent, and that they could just spend their time back there together. No one else would know them, and they would only have to concern on where they want to go. No other commitments, no other worries. The two of them spending time together, going to places, trying out new things, meeting new people, with no strings attached, just spending the time together. And when you see it like that, the whole song just takes this reflective element to it of wanting to not just have their life in a better position, but specifically a place where they can just focus on what they like with the person they love the most. And an alternate takeaway you can have that doesn't necessarily negate the one I just went over is that this song in its entirety could also simply be talking about nostalgia, reminiscing on the past of how things once were, the way you used to see things, and just missing certain things from the past, from a different time where it felt like another world. And to be honest, for some people, perhaps, especially if they've been around for a longer time, Sonic series, they may look at it and wanting to be brought back to another time as well. Work It Out is the next song we'll be going over from the soundtrack. This one, the instrumentation alone is already excellent. It's a song you can just hear in a club dancing towards. Definitely got a great rhythm. One of my favourites, actually, I'll have to say. And the lyrics themselves speak to something that is so heartfelt by myself, and I'm sure by many others. Out of all of the songs on this soundtrack, I think this is the one where I can safely say it's the one that has definitely grown on me with age. The meaning behind it, of the words being said, this song is definitely the one that means the most to me now as I've grown older. And the gist of Work It Out is it's talking about work. But more than that, it's talking about life. It's talking about the future as a whole, which will require a lot of work. We all need to work together to build a better life, is how the song begins. And that establishes the narrative, so to speak, of the song, where life, maybe it's going well, maybe it's not going well, but in order to make the future better, in order to get what we want, to achieve our dreams and our ideals, we have to work together as people in order to bring them about. To make what we feel real and beyond just in our head, we have to actively work towards it and help one another achieve it and build it together, because alone it won't happen the way you envision it. And it talks about how nothing in this world comes for free. We have to make it what we want. If you're unsatisfied with the way something is, dreaming about it becoming better probably won't fix your problem or change things. You have to make it what you want. You have to be the action. And the more of you that can come together to do something to achieve it, the more likely it will be to happen. You, me, and everybody, as the song says. And as it talks about work it out, think about it, work it out, talk about it, work it out, make it happen. You need to think about what it is you're trying to achieve, what it is you want, why you want it. You need to talk about it with other people, exchange ideas, learn different viewpoints, cycle through different opinions, try and boil down something that's core and understandable and you can all get behind, and then you need to work it out, make it happen together, and turn it from this idea, this dream, into something real. You've got to make it real, but it's got to be a collaborative effort. Whether you're talking from a local scale, a small scale, or if you want to go big and you're talking about a country or even the world as a whole, you've got to work together. And one of the verses speaks especially heartfelt to me, and it talks about how we all know that life gets harder. It's getting harder day by day. And yeah, yes it is. But then it goes on to say that we can show that we are trying. We'll need to make it sure that everyone can say, you're the one I can depend on.
We all know that life gets harder. It's getting harder day by day. We can show that we are trying. We're making sure that everyone can say, you're the one I can depend on. No one else can put it right. I'm someone you can rely on. 'Cause we're not giving up without a goal.
And what this is talking about is how, yes, life is getting harder, but if you try your best in what you do, you'll be able to get more out of what you're doing. Sure, you may not get what you specifically were hoping for, but if you try your best, if you try your hardest, then other people will see in you that effort, that energy, and that drive that you're putting into whatever it is you're doing, and it will make it that much easier for them to respect you, to respect what you're doing, to think I can depend on this person, and to collaborate with you. This song is talking about how, as a people, we need to come together, help ourselves, help each other, and work together to make it real. Work it out, talk it out, think about it. For the final race course of Sonic R, there is Diamond in the Sky. And since the map is made out of crystals and diamonds and other such things, it's a fitting name. But the Diamond in the Sky the song refers to is not the actual track that Sonic and Co are running across, but instead, the person in the song is singing about the person they love, and that is their diamond in the sky. I actually don't have a whole lot to talk about for this one, because the song wears its inspiration on its sleeve. This is simply talking about someone's love, and seemingly they're together forever, and they're explaining how it makes them feel. So there's not much more to go into. The lyrics are still great for that purpose, but there's nothing more that I need to decipher from it. It's quite clear what this song's going for, and it does it very well. If I were to go for something though, you could potentially put forward that perhaps this song is a narrative sequel to Back in Time, and the couple that was in Back in Time are this same couple here in Diamond in the Sky, and perhaps they've gotten married or some other form of deeper connection at the point of this song. And there are a couple hints that might suggest this is so. They're talking about now they can travel together and they'll never be apart, which relates to the idea of going to a place they don't know and exploring it. And at a certain point, the singer also says that "you're mine," referring to their diamond in the sky, whereas in the previous version, Back in Time, "you're mine" is more of a suggestion that's not 100% yet. So it's a light connection, but I can believe it. Perhaps this really is the narrative sequel to Back in Time. But either way, Diamond in the Sky is a nice song. Whilst Diamond in the Sky was the music playing on the final stage, if you enter the last level as Super Sonic, you will instead hear the main theme of the game, Super Sonic Racing.
Come on now, race! Everybody supersonic racing. Try to keep your feet right on the ground. When you're supersonic racing, there's no time to look around.
This theme is the most Sonic sounding track of the whole OST, and naturally it's the most well-known piece of music from Sonic R. Probably because of the fact that it feels the most like a traditional Sonic song, it's also the one that Sega tends to use the most. In Sonic Generations, it's the only track from Sonic R to show up. So, Super Sonic Racing. Is it a good song? Well, I would say it certainly gets the blood pumping, and considering this is the final level of a racing game, that checks out for me. Super Sonic Racing doesn't really have a super deep message, it's just supposed to be some high octane music that you are rushing forward with or jamming out, whatever it is you want to do with the song, and it succeeds on all cylinders. It doesn't need to be deep to be great, and Super Sonic Racing is just that. It is a great song. Last but certainly not least, we have You're My Number One, the credits music for Sonic R. And this track combines the feeling of concluding your activities, specifically a race, as well as mixing it in with another commitment to love of a specific person. So yes, it's the third love song in the Sonic R soundtrack, which again, you can see why some people perhaps felt like this wasn't a fitting soundtrack for the racing game, but regardless of that, it's a fantastic song. The music is great, it's jazzy, it's upbeat, the lyrics are snappy, all of it comes together in a really bombastic, positive, and yet still coming down sort of concluding way. It feels finite, but it's going out with a bang. And this is probably my favorite song from the entire soundtrack. I love the way it sounds. I love the lyrics. I think it's a great song, and it's my favorite from the soundtrack. In terms of deeper meaning, it's going on about how they're remembering all the good times they had with this person, and how it just reaffirms in their mind that this person is the one. They've made the right choice. They're certain that they're meant to be together and that they're happy together. And yes, you could probably tie it in to the narrative journey witnessed in Back in Time and Diamond in the Sky, which would make it a trilogy if you want to take it that way. But all in all, fantastic way to end the game and a great addition to the soundtrack of Sonic R. So I hope I've managed to explain why I enjoy Sonic R's soundtrack as much as I do. I genuinely think it's a fantastic collection of music, and I really wanted to share my appreciation for it in this video, since it's so underrated, almost criminally so. The music we've been listening to has been composed by Richard Jacques, and it was voiced by TJ Davis. So many thanks for both of them for bringing these songs to life. I hope my appreciation for this music has been clear, and that perhaps some of you can now appreciate the soundtrack on a deeper level. And if you hadn't heard these songs before, I severely recommend you check them out in your free time. They are seriously great. And if you haven't played Sonic R before, well, maybe now is the time. Still, that'll be all from me. I went on about this a lot longer than I thought I was going to when I started, but I'm glad I got to say all of that. Thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it and want to see more of this style of content, then please let me know your feedback in the comments down below. Leave it a like and promote it across social media to let the conversation grow. I hope you have a great day, and to see you next time. This is the Mighty Emperor, signing off.